Man, I really needed that aspirin. So after that beautifully awful sequence, we cut back to Rey and Chewbacca on the island at night. You are trying way too hard to convince me to spend money on you. I'm honestly less charmed and more creeped out by that blank-eyed stare. It doesn't even look that cute when close up. It looks more like a rejected Muppet with a nose growing through its mustache. We then see Luke wandering around the Falcon as he comes across R2-D2, who tries to convince him to come back.
Old friend. I wish I could make you understand. But I'm not coming back. Nothing can make me change my mind.
Years ago, you served my father in the Clone Wars. Now he begs you to help him in his struggle against the Empire. I regret that I am unable to present my father's request
That
to
was
you.
a cheap move.
But my ship is fallen under attack, and I'm afraid my mission to bring you to Alderaan has failed. This is our most desperate hour. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
Ah, so it wasn't the deaths of billions of people and the destruction of several planets that motivates Luke to join the fight. Nope. All it took was some sweet, sweet fan service.
You dick.
So Luke goes to Rey in her sleep and tells her that they'll begin her Jedi training in the morning. We then cut back to the Rebel fleet as they tell the audience that Leia has completely dropped out of the plot and that Admiral Akbar is dead.
Leia is unconscious, but recovering. That's the only good news I have. Admiral Akbar, all our leadership, they're gone.
Now, I know that I'm only speaking for myself when I say this, but what the hell? Admiral Akbar is dead? Holy shit! I barely even noticed that the first time I saw the film. Like, so much focus was put on the wrong things that I barely even saw him in the hull. That's actually a pretty hard kick to the balls. I mean, what kind of effect do you think this could be having on the characters?
If she were here, she'd say, save your sorrow for after the fight.
Wait, seriously? Admiral Akbar is dead and you're just gonna briefly mention it with a hand wave like he was a random background character?
To that end, the chain of
Okay,
command
hold
is
up,
clear.
hold up. You can't just do that, okay? You can't just say that Admiral Akbar is dead and just move on like nothing happened. Whether you were fond of him or not, Admiral Akbar was an iconic character. He played key roles in several fights against the Empire, and there were Robot Chicken sketches dedicated to him, acknowledging his popularity among Star Wars fans. So now you're telling me that this early in the movie, without proper screen time and without a proper send-off, he's just gone and you're barely gonna touch upon it? This guy helped save the rebels in the Battle of Endor, and this is how you honor his memory? This isn't C-3PO we're talking about here, it's fucking Akbar!
The chain of command is clear as to who should take her place.
Well, it better be Jesus himself if you're willing to shove the finger that far up our asses. But no, instead it's Emmeline Holdo, Vice Admiral of the Resistance. And she is Holdo. Yeah, that's pretty much all I can say about her. She certainly is Holdo. Remember, I watched this movie 3 times in preparation for this review, and she does nothing significant that would contribute to anything resembling a personality. She's just there, and that's it. Now, normally that's not a bad thing, but this is supposed to be a character who replaces Admiral Akbar. Alright, maybe I'm just being a little too judgmental. Perhaps there's something to her that I'm not seeing. So, does she do anything different from what Admiral Akbar would be doing? What? Okay, does she do anything significant with her role? Seriously? Alright, does she at least do anything to help out the rebels in any way? Are you kidding me? Okay, you assholes, if she doesn't do anything important or useful throughout her screen time, why did you even bother including her?
I think there was an assumption being made for quite a while that girls didn't care about Star Wars, or that girls weren't identifying with characters like Luke Skywalker or Han Solo. They were only identifying with Princess Leia or characters in other movies along those lines. And I think You know, it's not just Star Wars that's making this change. I think culturally, and I want to believe that there is real movement and momentum beginning to happen where those kind of lines are being blurred.
Okay, so they killed off Admiral Akbar, one of the most iconic side characters in the series, in the most obscure way possible, for the singular purpose of introducing this echo chamber for Kathleen Kennedy's female empowerment movement. This is a character who does next to nothing and could have easily been cut out of the film with Akbar taking up her role. Is anyone else seeing how this was a horrible decision on every single front, or am I the only one having this issue? Yeah, as most of you may know by now, Kathleen has not been doing a good job as president of Lucasfilm. And if The Last Jedi is anything to go by, I'm pretty sure that the reasons for that are incredibly obvious. But this is something that we'll have to talk about later. For now, we get back to the plot as the dick measuring contest to end all dick measuring contests finally begins between Admiral Holdo and Poe.
So, what's our plan?
Our plan, Captain? Not Commander, right? Wasn't it Leia's last official act to demote you for your dreadnought plan? Where we lost our entire bombing fleet?
Yes, thank you for reminding me about how pointless that scene was.
Commander, you can call me whatever you like. I just want to know what's going on.
Of course you do. I understand. I've dealt with plenty of trigger-happy flyboys like you. You're impulsive, dangerous, and the last thing we need right now. So stick to your post and follow my orders.
And do remind me to get a new wig on the way home. I've been stuck with this do for weeks and I look like a Smurf threw up on my scalp. We then cut to Finn, who attempts to get into an escape pod when he hears a woman crying in the distance. Thus, we are introduced to that woman from that anti-smoking ad that no one will want to remember after this film, Rose. Get it? Get it? She has the same charm as that pilot who just died. That makes it important.
What are you doing here?
Hey. Hi. I was,
You're Finn. Be Finn.
the Finn.
You are a hero. You left the First Order and what you did on the Starkiller base. When we heard about it, my sister Paige said, Rose, that's a real hero. Know right from wrong and don't run away when it gets hard, she said.
Wow, she went from crying over her dead sister to fangirling over some guy in a matter of seconds. Now that's a case of bipolar disorder if I ever saw one. But in all seriousness, if you think that it was weird that she went from being sad and depressed to super happy and enthusiastic in a matter of seconds, no need to worry because there's several more moments like that, and each one of them will be as confusing as the last. So she finds out that Finn was planning to abandon ship and stuns him, knocking him out. But he wakes up later to tell her about the order that's tracking them through lightspeed.
They can track us through lightspeed.
Yes, and they could... I can't feel my teeth. What did you shoot me with?
Active tracking.
What now?
Hyperspace tracking is new tech, but the principle must be the same as any active tracker. So they're only tracking us from the lead ship. But we can't get to the tracker. It's an A-class process. They'll control it from the main bridge.
Oh, I mean, yes, but every A-class process
Has a dedicated code breaker.
Well, you just made that so much more complicated than it needed to be. So, who do they turn for answers on disabling the tracker?
Could I do it? Of course I could do it, but I can't do it. I'm a little tied down right now.
Maz, what is happening?
Union dispute. You do not want to hear about it.
Alright, I got a couple of questions here. So what kind of union dispute is going on over there? It sounds like it's important, but it's kind of just hand-waved away. Basically just a lame reason for Maz to not be able to do it herself. But hell, that union dispute sounds a lot more interesting than everything else that's happening in this movie. Why can't we see that? I really would like to see it if it's supposed to be that important. Also, why don't we have Maz joining them on this mission? If you're gonna say that this dispute is important but just hand-wave it out of the movie anyway, why bother having it at all? Maz joining them on this mission would have been a really fun idea to experiment with. Wouldn't it have been a lot more interesting to see Maz fighting alongside Finn and Rose and Poe as they sneak on board an enemy ship? We could have gotten something like what happened in episode 4. But what really bothers me with this scene is why is Maz even in the movie at all? Just to introduce us to a plot point that could have easily been done by any other character? She's barely in this scene for a minute and then she never appears again in the rest of the film. It's just a pointless cameo for her character to be in.
There's exactly one guy I trust who can crack that kind of security. He's a master codebreaker, an ace pilot, a poet with a blaster.
Oh my, it sounds like this codebreaker fellow can do everything.
Oh yes, he can.
Yep. I believe I'm with Finn on this one. Is there something going on between Maz and that codebreaker that we should talk about? Actually, no, I don't think I want to find out what it is. So they're told to go to this casino where the codebreaker is located, and they prepare to set off to find him. Which is going to bite this movie in the ass! Are you seeing a pattern here? So we cut back to the island where it's daytime now. I'm guessing that it just has a really short day and night cycle, and Rey finds herself in a very unnerving situation. It seems that she and Kylo are somehow seeing into each other's minds, and they both think she's been teleported onto his ship. She tries blasting him, but the shot doesn't register and ends up affecting the outside world instead.
Can you see my surroundings?
You're gonna pay for what you did.
I can't see yours. Just you. Luke?
What's that about?
Well, what do you know? Another forced and badly timed joke. Let me give you some advice, The Last Jedi. Stop trying so hard. Then maybe you'll come up with something actually funny. Okay, so with that out of the way, Luke decides to begin his training with Rey.
The Force is not a power you have. It's not about lifting rocks. It's the energy between all things, a tension, a balance that binds the universe together.
So the Force is the string theory.
Reach out.
I feel something.
You feel it?
Yes, I feel it.
That's the Force.
Really?
Wow, it must be really strong
Oh,
of
I've
you.
never felt any... Ow! You meant reach out like...
Awesome line reads there. No, really, that was literally the best thing in this whole damn movie. Okay, so Luke shows her how to use the Force to feel the presence of the island. While doing so, she ends up sensing this dark hole calling to her, and it seems to be tainted with the dark side of the Force. Luke tries to get her to resist as she ends up displaying a fearful sense of raw power.
I've seen this raw strength only once before. In Ben Solo. It didn't scare me enough then. It does now.
And this is probably one of my main problems with the movie, the dialogue. Throughout the film, it's constantly switching between being silly and goofy and dark and tragic and serious and straightforward and mysterious and philosophical, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if it's trying to have variety or add to the characters, but whatever it is, it's not succeeding. The delivery on a lot of these lines is really off, and the acting has this inconsistent feel to it which further messes up the translation. But regardless of who's saying what, it's just not good writing. The choice of words comes across as very out of place and too misguided to come across as clever. It's honestly so bad that it makes everything Anakin said in Episode 2 look like it came out of Citizen Kane.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
I've dealt with plenty of trigger-happy flyboys like you. You're impulsive, dangerous, and the last thing we need right now.
I know it's easy to make fun of how boring Episode 2 was, but hey, if I had to choose between simply being bored for 2 hours and having my intelligence being insulted for 2 hours, I would happily choose the adventures of whiny Anakin Skywalker over this. At least I'd get a good nap out of it. Okay, so as Finn and Rose are traveling to the casino, we see that Rey and Chewbacca are working on the Millennium Falcon. You know what? I actually really sympathize with Chewie here. He's like an interpretation of everyone who got sick of the Porg marketing after the first trailer came out.
Why is the Force connecting us? You and I.
Murderous snake! You're too late. You lost. I found Skywalker.
You have that look in your eyes. From the forest. And you called me a monster.
You are a monster.
It seems that Rey is starting to give in to her anger, and Kylo sees this as something he can use to turn her to his side. But this Force conversation seems to have some very confusing implications. First, Kylo is able to feel the rain on the planet off of Rey, and not only does he feel it, he actually gets wet. So he can feel the rain from the planet, but he couldn't feel when Rey shot him with her blaster? Was it because they had bad Wi-Fi, because it wasn't fully developed, or because they thought it was cool and they decided to put it in there for no reason? Whatever the answer is, it's still one of the most confusing uses of the Force I've ever seen. There's also seeing Rey becoming progressively angry with Kylo, and to the movie's credit, she does have every right to be angry with him. He abandoned his family, killed his father in cold blood, and willingly joined an organization that has killed billions. However, it seems to drive home that because she's acting angry and short, she seems to be losing touch with the light side of the Force and falling into the dark side. And yet the movie is constantly convincing us that she's fit to be a Jedi. And that's not including the minimal training that we've seen so far. It only further proves how she's learning nothing from Luke about the light side of the Force, the Jedi way, how to manage her emotions. You know, one of the main reasons we're still on the island? You'd think she would have picked up something by now. Or you'd think that Luke would get off his lazy ass and help her. In hindsight, this isn't Rey's fault as much as it is Luke's, because he's put practically no effort into educating her, and has barely paid any attention to her since he claimed that they'd begin her training. It's like he suddenly turned into America's failed education system, which I really didn't think would still be existing this far into the future.
We get in, we find this code breaker, we get out.
You know this town? Canto Bight?
From stories. It's a terrible place filled with the worst people in the galaxy.
So it's basically a fancy Mos Eisley spaceport.
You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Except for Channel Awesome. But don't worry, they'll be dead really, really soon. And they'll try to hide it by quietly rebranding themselves as the Doug Walker Show. Anyway, the two park onto the beach illegally and go into the casino to look for the codebreaker. So wait, they seriously just rushed into the casino without thinking any of this through? They couldn't bother to find a legal parking space and pay for it? As a matter of fact, why didn't they just park away from the casino? I know you're on an important mission, but I think you can afford to do some extra walking if it doesn't get you arrested and compromise the whole thing. So inside the casino, they start looking for the codebreaker, where several more forced jokes ensue. Look, if you're going to stop the plot every other minute for an ineffective joke, you'd might as well just pause the movie every once in a while. Because that's what the comedy in this movie is the equivalent of. It is literally the equivalent of pressing the pause button every so often just to troll the rest of the family on movie night. So the two are taken surprise by a small quake when Rose suggests that she knows the cause. They head outside to see some alien horses racing, and Rose takes the moment to discuss a dark piece of her past.
My sister and I grew up in a poor mining system. The First Order stripped our ore to finance their military, then shelled us to test their weapons. They took everything we had. And who do you think these people are? There's only one business in the galaxy that'll get you this rich.
War.
Selling weapons to the First Order. I wish I could put my fist through this whole lousy, beautiful town.
Okay, so this scene pretty much sums up my problem with Rose as a character. If I could describe her with just 2 words, I know exactly what I would use. Mood whiplash. To put it simply, there's a bunch of times where she's sad and serious in one instant, then happy and silly in the next. And it happens with no natural transition between the emotions. Whenever she has a personality shift, it feels artificial. Remember in her first scene when she's depressed and broken down over the loss of her sister and then immediately turns into this quirky and optimistic silly person when she sees Finn? Do you remember any sort of natural connection between those moods? I highly doubt it, because the emotional shift is so fast and impatient that it ends up feeling confusing. If you're looking for a good comparison, let's look at Pinkie Pie for a minute. I know this is a really weird comparison to make, but when you really look at it, Pinkie Pie is Rose done much more properly. A lot of fans know her as this energetic goofball with a secret emotional side, something that a lot of people have toyed with over the years. They like to see Pinkie as this optimistic and hopeful person who's hiding some kind of emotional conflict, a sort of inner struggle that no one else can see. But here's the main difference. What makes Pinkie's serious moments stronger is that they feel much more rare. The show handles her bubbly persona properly, and when she has a serious moment, they took the time to build up towards that seriousness. Her change in attitude was much more progressive, hinting at things that expressed her transformation little by little. It didn't just happen out of nowhere, there was a certain care putting into how it happened. Pinky's serious moments weren't good because of, oh, she's a character who's supposed to be happy and silly and now she's being all serious. They were good because something actually made her hair deflate and cry. Whenever you see Rose switching emotions, it never feels like it was deserved. It feels like it's being done because the writers want to mess around with how seriously you take this character. Something like that needs to evolve naturally on its own, not have it constantly being forced onto the audience. Because when you end up doing that with your characters, your writing comes across as emotionally manipulative. And it's one of the worst factors that go into turning off people's interest in your story. You don't want people to think that Star Wars is trying to be emotionally manipulative, do you? Here's a piece of advice. Give this character a tone and just stick with it. Otherwise, you're going to turn into Modern Family Guy. And that's the last thing that any of us should want.
Red Claw Blue.
The Master Codebreaker.
Kind of looks like Steve Martin if he aged backwards and became a James Bond villain. But the authorities end up finding them and tase them, knocking them out and throwing them in their prison. Guess you should have paid for the damn parking spot! God, why is the future of the Resistance being trusted with these dumbasses? We then cut to Rey doing her Jedi training. By herself. With Luke not giving any pointers. You know, if Rey's Jedi training is supposed to be one of the more important aspects of the movie, it really helps to focus on it more. We're almost halfway through this movie and we've hardly seen any of it. Even this scene where she's swinging her battle pole and her lightsaber around feel very underwhelming. It doesn't look like Rey is learning anything about the Jedi or the Force. It just looks like she's swinging a sword around, and in a very generic way. Oh nice, another forced joke, because you know, we haven't gotten nearly enough of those yet. So then we get another scene of Luke completely shitting on everything the Jedi have fought for and the legacy of those who died for peace and balance in the galaxy. Does that sound insulting to you? Well, if it doesn't, you haven't seen anything yet. So Luke takes the moment to explain to Rey about the moment when Kylo turned against him. And, as you probably might have guessed, it's going to bite this movie in the ass. A lot of things are gonna bite this movie in the ass. It's like it was all foreshadowing for the absolute train wreck that is the second half of this clusterfuck of a movie.
I went to confront him, and he turned on me. The temple was burning. He had vanished with a handful of my students and slaughtered the rest. Leia blamed Snoke, but it was me. I failed because I was Luke Skywalker, Jedi Master, a legend.
Dude, we get it. You fucked up. How about you stop constantly hammering in how you fucked up and do something to fix your fuck up? Stop wasting your time whining and do something!
Do something! Do something! Do something!
We cut back to Finn and Rose inside their holding cell as they meet a shady character claiming that he's a hacker who can help the two escape. After he frees them from their cell, they come across BB-8, who surprisingly did a pretty good job taking down all those guards. 3 armed guards were seriously overpowered against this one small droid that wasn't even built with any offensive capabilities. I can understand gagging and tying up one of them, but I'm pretty sure that the other 2 would have easily destroyed him before he could have done something. And for that matter, how did he sneak in so easily? Did nobody really notice a small droid infiltrating the prison cell until it was too late? This isn't Homeland Security, it's a casino in outer space.
Hey! Hands up! Hands up!
Yeah, man.
Oh wow. I didn't think it was possible to be more useless than the stormtroopers, but there you go. So Finn and Rose split up from the group and come across the child slaves they saw earlier. Huh, small world, I guess. They convince them to help the two escape, and they soon flee from the guards on alien horses. What follows is yet another series of forced jokes and poor comedy within a lame chase scene. God, at this point you can make a drinking game out of this movie's comedy. Also, I just really love how they free the alien horses but leave the child slaves behind. As if to say, thanks for helping us out, have fun getting whipped by your owners. So with BB-8 and the hacker coming to their rescue, they're off to return to the rebel fleet and infiltrate the hacker ship. We then cut back to the island where it's nighttime and... I know I keep bringing this up, but it just really annoys me. Rey's training is supposed to be a very important part of the story, and we're constantly cutting away from it without seeing anything being established. And when we do come back to it, we don't see shit. We haven't seen any form of training except for that short montage of Rey swinging stuff, and that pep talk with Luke revealing his past didn't teach Rey anything about the Jedi. All she gets from it is stuff that she already knows. But even if you were to put that aside, it's not even done in a way that implies any form of a student-teacher relationship between the two. When Rey's Jedi training was hinted at in The Force Awakens, it was implied that we were going to see something like The Empire Strikes Back. Things like when Yoda taught Luke about the dangers of giving into the darkness inside him, or learning about how the Force is this mysterious energy that binds everything together, or even how Yoda was alongside Luke throughout his training. In comparison, there are lines of dialogue where Luke says some of these things, but he doesn't do much to show it to Rey. In this movie, Rey's Jedi training comes across as mostly self-taught. She was doing pretty damn well on her own, so what the hell does she need Luke for? He's just standing at a distance doing nothing and expecting Rey to figure it out for herself. Again, this might not have been so bad except for the fact that you see almost none of it throughout this segment of the film. So much time is spent on this annoying casino trip with Finn and Rose that the film completely rushes through Rey's subplot before it does anything to leave an impression. If Rey's Jedi training is supposed to be so important, then why does it barely get any screen time at all? I'm just saying that it really helps your retelling of The Empire Strikes Back to focus on what made The Empire Strikes Back so iconic and beloved. Not this stupid casino subplot and this Holdo versus Poe subplot that will end up having no meaning by the end of the second act.
Why did you hate your father? Do you have something, a cowl or something you can put on? Why did you hate your father? Give me an honest answer.
You know what, at this point I'm just going to assume that you were writing this movie under the influence of alcohol half the time, because that's the only reason I can think of that the movie is so filled to the brim with an overabundance of humor like this. If I wanted to see Rey awkwardly reacting to Kylo with his shirt off, I would have gone to DeviantArt, not a movie theater where I have to sacrifice money to see this shit.
Your parents threw you away like garbage.
They didn't.
They did, but you can't stop needing them. It's your greatest weakness. Looking for them everywhere. In Han Solo, now in Skywalker. Did he tell you what happened that night?
Yes.
No. He had sensed my power, as he senses yours. And he feared it.
So Rey goes out to seek that dark hole that she saw in her vision to see if it has any answers to the identity of her parents. She swims down a pond and surfaces on the other side to find a mirror. She takes a closer look at it, and I have to be honest, it's kind of hard to tell exactly what they're trying to go with in this scene. I know it's supposed to be symbolism for something, but the scene isn't very clear on what it is. Is it supposed to touch upon how empty she feels about her past because she doesn't know who her parents are? Is it about her denial that her parents were some nobodies? Is it about Rey struggling with her frustration and how even the dark side of the Force won't tell her anything? Is her reflection a way of telling her that she needs to admit to something that she already feels deep down? I get that it's trying to say something, but it's too vague and not clear enough to get what it's inferring. And I get that the point of the scene is that it's supposed to be vague and not spoon-feed its meaning to you, but there still has to be some kind of clarity to what the scene is telling us. Look at the scene where Luke enters the tree in The Empire Strikes Back, where it shows Luke's head in Vader's helmet after he cuts it off. The way the scene is shot gives you a clear idea as to what the scene is saying about Luke's struggle with the dark side of the Force. How he sees a piece of himself inside of Vader which could work as foreshadowing to his true identity. It's about his fear of falling into the dark side of the Force, but still seeking its power to protect his friends. And the facial expressions that Mark Hamill gave back then helped make the scene feel more poignant. You can really feel how terrified he is to see Vader in that cave and how confused he feels to see himself as Vader. But here, Rey just looks kind of dumbfounded. Like she was having unrealistic expectations of what she'd be finding in this place, and then she just goes, meh, wasn't as interesting as I thought it'd be. It could be a directing problem or a writing problem, but Daisy Ridley just doesn't give the proper look in this scene. She doesn't have any fitting expressions to convey what Rey is supposed to be feeling. And because of that, combined with the lack of clarity this scene provides, it all rings hollow. I know that it's unfair to compare this scene to when George Lucas was at his prime, but it's still coming across as an homage to Empire, so it ends up being a lot less forgiving for how empty it feels. So after Rey comes to the conclusion that Kylo was the one she has to go to for answers, she tries contacting him using the Force. So after all of that time she spent being angry with him, calling him out for betraying his mother, killing his father, and affiliating with an organization that has killed billions, all of a sudden it's just gone. She's now calmingly offering her hand in alliance with this guy, even though everything about his actions has told us that she shouldn't be trusting him. Did she have an acid trip in that cave that we just didn't see and it messed with her brain? Because if she didn't, it's completely illogical for her to suddenly trust Kylo with anything. God damn, this movie is stupid. So the two try to get in contact, but Luke walks in and interrupts the meeting. Rey begins to confront Luke as he finally tells her the full version of his story.
I saw darkness. I'd sensed it building in him. I'd seen it in moments during his training. But then I looked inside, and it was beyond what I ever imagined. Snoke had already turned his heart. He would bring destruction and pain and death at the end of everything I love because of what he will become. And for the briefest moment of pure instinct, I thought I could stop it. It passed like a fleeting shadow. And I was left with shame. And with consequence. And the last thing I saw were the eyes of a frightened boy whose master had failed him.
No, just no.
Where do I even begin with this fucking scene? How can I possibly even start to form the words that would properly describe how badly it gives the middle finger to everyone who even remotely cared about the original trilogy? You're telling me that with no thought, with no reluctance, and with no plan, Luke was going to kill his freaking nephew in his sleep? No, no, a million times no. Do you have any idea how much this is an insult to his character? I do, because I've thought of just about every single way that this has gone wrong. First, this was the thing that made Kylo Ren become a bad guy. The thing that made him completely turn to the dark side of the Force. So yeah, Ben becoming Snoke's apprentice, him killing his father in cold blood, and him ordering those stormtroopers to kill those villagers, all of that is potentially, if not entirely, his fault. Second, isn't this the same Luke that still saw goodness in his father, aka Darth fucking Vader? Remember all those talks about him still seeing light within his father and helping him understand his struggle between the light and dark side of the Force? How he didn't want to give up on him because even though he's a villain who killed a lot of people, he was still his father and wanted to help him? It added some interesting nobility to Luke because no matter how far Darth Vader went down, he was still his family and wanted to help him. Here, he's literally prepared to kill his family, his fucking nephew. Third, he was going to kill his nephew, aka the son of his sister. How do you think she would feel if she knew that her brother was going to kill her son without a second thought? I'm pretty sure that she would rightfully beat the shit out of him for trying to kill her son and turning him into a monster. And I'm pretty sure that Han would have definitely beaten the shit out of him for it. Fourth, why didn't Luke just talk to Ben? If he really was worried about his nephew becoming a Dark Lord, why didn't he try to offer him any help, like he did for Anakin? This could have easily been resolved if Luke just took the time to talk to him and think about what he could say to help him, instead of, you know, exactly what he ends up doing. And even if it didn't work, at least Ben wouldn't have turned because of Luke's absent-minded stupidity. His main reason for becoming a bad guy still comes from an easily avoidable misunderstanding. A misunderstanding that occurred because Luke just assumed that there was no hope for him. And once more, this actually makes Kylo Ren look like he's in the right. Remember, we were seeing this flashback from his his perspective too. And the only part he ever actually saw was the part where he wakes up to see Luke standing over him with his lightsaber ignited. From Kylo's perspective, Luke was going to murder him and he was just defending himself. And fifth, and maybe the worst of all, you're making Luke Skywalker look like a psychopath. I know that he had a vision of Ben becoming a Dark Lord and bringing ruin to the galaxy, but really think about everything I just pointed out. He could have easily taken the moment to talk to Ben about his dark side and help him. From what we saw, there was no indication of him pondering such a thing. He immediately jumped to the conclusion that he needed to kill him. He was going to kill his nephew, betray the trust of his sister as well as his best friend, and he was going to do all of this while Ben was in his fucking sleep. This isn't the decision of a noble man making a tragic sacrifice to save the future. This is the decision that a freaking psychopath would make. If your first solution to a problem is to kill someone in their sleep and you actually make the instinct to almost go through with it, you're a goddamn psychopath. And I'm pretty sure, and I'm just thinking out loud here, that Luke's character was not meant to be a psychopath. Am I in some kind of parallel dimension or something? Are we all in some kind of parallel dimension where the original Star Wars trilogy didn't exist, and Luke was just a character that J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson came up with? Because this is not, in any way, the same Luke Skywalker from episodes 4 through 6. I'm convinced this Luke Skywalker is some kind of clone. He killed the original, took his identity, and tried to start a galactic takeover by training a new generation of Jedi. And one of them just happened to be siding with a force that opposed his plan. Because that would explain why this evil clone of Luke was going to kill Ben instead of talk to him. I don't care what anyone says, this is my headcanon for this movie.
You failed him by thinking his choice was made. It wasn't. There's still conflict in him. If he would turn from the dark side, that could shift the tide. This could be how we win.
This is not going to go the way you think.
Oh my god, I just figured it out. This is a line that was literally used in the trailers. I'm thinking Mark Hamill deliberately had this put into the script because he wanted it to be put in the trailers. Why? Because he was literally trying to warn us ahead of time and help us save our money and dignity. Oh god, I am so sorry, Mark. We should have seen the signs. We should have listened.
We didn't listen! Stan, get in the car! We have to evacuate! We didn't listen!
So after that absolute travesty, Rey decides to set off on her own, leaving the island and cutting her Jedi training short. So, you've been on this island for less than 24 hours. You received merely a handful of hours of Jedi training, and now that plot point just kind of ends? Do you not see what you did wrong here? Rey's Jedi training was a key point of the story, and you barely even focused on it. At least Return of the Jedi took place a frickin' year after the events of The Empire Strikes Back. That would have given Luke plenty of time to resume his training with Yoda. This movie is so badly rushed that you didn't even give Rey more than a few minutes of actual training, and that was like 30% of people's anticipation for your movie. It's like you never took the time to double check The Force Awakens to see if something, just something was off with your script. I'm really not asking for much here, just something resembling a sound and consistent narrative, please. Luke lights a match on fire and heads toward the Elder Tree containing all the remaining Jedi texts, just as Yoda comes by to talk some sense into him. What? What the fuck?! Alright, I know I'm making this review longer than it should be, but just fucking why? Why are you showing up to help Luke now? After years of sulking and feeling sorry for himself and doing nothing while the First Order was destroying the lives of billions, why are you choosing now to talk sense into Luke? And for that matter, what the fuck have Anakin and Obi-Wan been doing this whole time? Were they just sitting by with a bucket of popcorn and watching the fireworks go off? Did they somehow grow blind and deaf in the afterlife and they never sensed anything that's been happening in Luke's life since the Battle of Endor? What realm of insanity am I in right now? I can't possibly be in a reality where something this stupid exists in the Star Wars canon. It has to be some kind of illusion.
I'm ending all of this. The tree, the text, the Jedi. I'm gonna burn it down.
Then why the fuck did we come all the way out here? Well, I suppose I should give them credit for giving Luke some form of common sense. Why would you do that? Weren't you the one who told Luke that you wanted the way of the Jedi to be passed down to the next generation? And now all of a sudden you just fucking blow it up? This isn't just some random library, it's the last of the Jedi religion, an irreplaceable piece of your fucking history! You know, for a wise sage, you really seem to be taking a lot of dumbass pills in the time that you've been dead.
So it is time. The Jedi Order to end.
Time it is. For you to look past a pile of old books.
Yeah, a pile of old books containing the very last of your culture that you just wiped from existence.
Wisdom they held, but that library contained nothing that the girl Rey does not already possess.
You trained her for 1 day. 1 day! How the fuck does that make her a Jedi Master? She didn't even read any of the textbooks in the montage. She didn't even read them in the deleted scenes.
Strength, mastery, but weakness, folly, failure also. Yes, failure most of all. The greatest teacher, failure is.
You know what? Shut the fuck up, old man. There's no saving this movie, not after what I've seen. Look, I'm sorry. I'm just really impatient with this movie right now. I think I need to take another break. See you guys in part 3, and I'll be seeing my doctor for another subscription of headache medicine.